thousands to last us till next April.
Yeah.
And we've got on our desk today, we've got about £12,000 worth of grant applications.
Yeah.
So how do we square that circle then? That we haven't, even if we had 12,000 here in the budget today, that would use up the entire budget for grants.
But we don't pass every grant application. Since I've been on council, we don't pass every grant. We turn them down, or we irrelevant.
Exactly, and then we turn to our staff and say, is it financially responsible to make this award? And if it's close to using up the budget, they'll say that it's absolutely fine because we didn't spend on this, so it's a perfectly legitimate thing to move it from this account to this account, because otherwise it goes unspent. And that's where we delegate to the staff to give us the advice to carry what we want to do.
So if we have an underspend rate across our accounts, that we're shoveling money that we've already spent last year to this grant allocation, am I understanding this? No, I don't mean like shoveling money, but if we've already okayed a grant in the last financial year, why are we passing it to this financial year if we've already had an underspend?
I think it was allocated by the council, because if they didn't allocate it, the thing wouldn't happen.
No, they allocated it last year to come out of this year's budget.
Yeah.
Oh right, so it wasn't allocated last year.
No, that's not true. On the 20th of March, the two grants were agreed to be in last year's budget. £3,000 Outfield Festival and £1,000 Bath Area Play Project were both agreed to be in last year's budget, because at the time
you were £3,000 Sun Valley.
That's a different one. I'm talking about the meeting on the 20th of March. If you look
in the November minutes of last year, you'll see that the £3,000 that was allocated was agreed by council to be included in the 2023-24
I think it's about rugby, wouldn't it? It's a rolling 3-year grant, so that makes perfect sense.
No, that's this year is the first year.
Okay, but for 3 years, it needs to come out 3 years budget. That's fine.
That's £3,000 a year.
Kosher. Yeah. But what Sean's saying is that we, on the 20th of March, agreed to give an outfield grant that should have been paid in last year's money, but it wasn't. It's been brought out this year's money.
I don't know about that.
It's not a problem though if we've got an underspend, is it? Can't we just adjust the accounts?
But it is a problem for us this year because we've got.
But Sean had itemised several other cricket club outfield expenditure that I was from the last year as well.
Well, it doesn't. There's lots of problems and errors in here. That's what I'm saying. I can't. I mean, look through all the numbers.
There are no problems or errors in this document. I'll tell you that for nothing. There are no errors in that because they've been looked at and they reflect what has come out of this year's budget. So there are no errors.
I don't think it's an error with the document. I'm saying there's an error with what year the money's come out of against what it should have.
That's what I'm understanding. It's all great stuff.
I just want to have the confidence
it's a shame that then we're left. If we've had an underspend, I don't understand why that has to happen. And we've already pre-spent.
I think that's we have, that's fine. But that seems to be a whole separate issue to what we've spent and haven't spent money on, which year it's come out of.
Well, only because it's eaten into this year's budget. Then we don't know how much we've got to play with.
Lots of times we've budgeted for things that have just not come about. So we budgeted £5,000 for the website and we got it for free. We budgeted money for Easter event, decided not to have it. So it was in the precept, it was budgeted for, and it's never happened because council decided when it came up not to do it. So that money eventually gets put into the reserves and can be used for other things.
Can you understand the confusion from somebody that's coming into this new, that's used to sit over there? Now, and as I say, I'll use this as an example, I'm not opening a can of worms here, but the issue of street marshals, for example, the budget decided we're going to get to the street marshals, we're going to reduce that budget from £26,000 down to £6,000 because you can't afford street marshals. And then we find that we're £133,000 over underspend. There's allocations of grants here that I don't know why they're in the financial year they're in. There are some that I can't actually find details of. There's probably a duplication of a grant, £2,000 to the cricket club in the precept leaflet. So all of this, the whole picture just makes me nervous that we don't actually have a good handle on it. And I just, and we're now moving into the next agenda item where we're going to be looking at potentially awarding grants. not out of the grant funds, because that won't be enough. So we'll be looking at taking funds from somewhere else in the budget, and I don't know where you're going to take it from in the budget, because I don't know where the underspends are, if they exist. So that's a summary of where my head is at the moment.
So can we assume then, worst case scenario, we've got just over £7,000 left. We can't increase that in any capacity that I'm aware.
No, we can.
Okay, alright, okay, so that's exciting then, so we can increase that.
We can kind of do anything.
But how much is in the reserve?
No, what it's talking about is the council had agreed to allocate money to an Easter fair and to a whatever, but we don't have that, which we didn't do.
So you can't do it now because you can never have Easter.
Right, but we don't know.
And we can
exactly
agree to move that money.
Oh, that's
we
what
we can move that money about, yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
okay,
we
so
do.
how much, do we know how much that totals to put into our grant fund?
Well, I don't think we get too excited because we've already got budget lines that are overspent.
I think if you look at the overall financial
This is
picture, which Paul has said,
We're already
our
at
actual
£5,000 on
finances, as far as I can tell, our actual finances are not in particularly bad shape, and that's just, however you decide to allocate it out in your budgets, you look at your actual balance, and if you've got
So we
the amount of
can
money you
increase
expect,
that
then
grant.
yes, of course we can.
Right, that's great.
But I would suggest that if there is some consensus that we've got £7,000 in, more or less, in that account, that is what we've got to work with in terms of those grant applications.
But you're going to be taking money out of something that's not within the £90,000 grant and events funding. So you're going to have to go digging around in another department.
No, I'm saying we can only contribute to these grant applications the money that we have in our grant.
Yeah, and leave us with nothing for the rest. Yeah, I appreciate that.
So we decide. So
So then we have nothing left for the rest of the year.
Well, we may decide to make further savings later on.
All I'd say is look at that figure, that £90,000 and how that's allocated. That's our entire grants and events budget. £15,000 for the for the Midland North Town Trust, through to Christmas Fair, through to the Carnival Association, and 19,000 of that is this. And yeah, you could decide not to have a summer fair and save yourself £8,000, but I don't think you're going to. So you might find 1,000 or 2,000 by cutting back on
the Easter fair that happened, and that's in the past. So that's just £2,000 that are available.
Well, it's shown in this year.
Because I just know it wasn't.
Only if it's ring fence.
Well, it depends. Depends where
It's
Easter
not
falls.
ring fence, is it? It's just.
Depends where Easter falls next year, doesn't it?
No, that'll be next year's budget.
Well, not if Easter falls in this financial year.
Yeah. But I mean, I think for the last council, we're minded to kind of stop the
when's Easter?
fair, but we put it into the budget anyway.
So if it's early.
Exactly.
Probably early.
Okay.
Okay, so Sean, what do you want to?
Well, I think we could. Well, if we want to move on to the grants, that's fine.
I don't think we're going to get a resolution to your concerns tonight.
No, we're not. So I don't know how we handle the next agenda item, but let's go to it and see what happens.
We've got no money, but let's move to grants.
Yeah.
Also, can I ask how many times can people apply for grant? Like, are there grant opening and
It's
deadlines?
all in our fairly convoluted, somewhat convoluted grant policy, but there is a limit in how often you can apply. And I think you're only allowed to give certain kinds of grants once every 3 years, perhaps. Then there are other types of grants that can be yearly. I think we
But
mentioned
there's no
before.
sort of open and close date, no opening 3 times a year.
No, it's not like that.
Throughout the year.
I don't think
I
so.
think moving forward that would be a very good idea
Then we can keep.
because we can keep track on it rather than them coming in mid-year when we spent all our money, which is unfair. So the first grant we've got is for £5,000 for the first Midsummer Norton Scout Group, and this is for a roof on their building. I might be wrong, but was this not deferred from previously?
Yes, so this came up, but it was in the pre-election period, so we thought it was wrong to.
Which one have you gone to first?
Yeah, maybe Scouts is in the middle.
Oh, sorry,
Although there may be, rather than look at them individually, if we look at them all to begin with, because some might not need, because we've slightly talking beforehand, the HARP application for irrigation of the field might fall under a town trust umbrella, so isn't appropriate because this is part of the grant.
But they should really apply to the town trust.
So that
The town trust owned a bit of land,
Yeah.
and then the town trust would probably end up coming to the council, I guess, but that's probably the proper mechanism for it. I think that makes sense.
can I interrupt, sorry, because the town trust don't award grants. So, but the town trustees, you could ask the town trustees, the managing committee, to consider spending town trust money on this. So, but there's no grant system within the town, within the town trust. But you could ask the town trust trustees to authorise this, to consider and authorise this.
Does it even come in? Does it even come under a grant? Because what we're talking about is maintenance and improvements in property or land that they own. So I would assume that will come under it, under some sort of budget we have for maintenance and of property and budget.
Possibly.
So
the town trust will probably have to put up the budget to afford that extra money, and then I say probably when they come for the block grant for council, you can see that would come from. So
well,
town trust don't generate that much income, do they?
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen any of their accounts, so I don't know what they do.
Well, you're not a trustee, are you?
No.
I think we're all trustees in the town trust.
Well, okay. Well, perhaps one of the things we could look at and a future item is is those numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Hart one we feel to go elsewhere.
We can go back and say that you should write to the town trust.
3215, 3,250, but that we should discount that one because it doesn't fall within the remit of the grant.
Yeah. Do we have to do any formal voting on that?
Yeah, well, if it doesn't fall within your grant criteria, then we'll just limit that as the application falling within the criteria. Which one was that?
Town trust.
The
Which is
Hart
also
one.
for council.
Okay, I think this one I was a bit confused about was the trauma breakthrough one.
Yeah.
Because that seems to sit largely within back. And they're just looking at an outreach in midsummer and autumn. Or they've got an increasing number of service users coming from midsummer and autumn, Radstock and Poulton. But they're requesting £5,000 per month for that.
And I did notice that the satellite office is going to be in the new, lovely new Hope House surgery in Radstock, which is good. But yeah, I thought it's one of these things that
kind of feels like we put a lot of money in, but what are we going to do?
Well,
Are they applying elsewhere?
well, it doesn't say, does it?
It's confusing.
So the first question would be, is where is going to be funding coming from?
The total project is 25,000, they proposed 5,000.
But the first thing I want to know is where the rest of the money is. Before we even,
well, the justification for it seemed to be that it was going to help people who currently have to travel to Bath for services, so it would stop the transport costs. And I guess now they'll have to travel to Radstock instead. But I'd be minded to give them substantially less, probably, but say we think it's a good idea to help subsidise transport. So, for instance, if people do have issues and they need to go to the surgery in Radstock, we could put the money towards that. But I don't know if it's necessarily up to this town council to put that kind of money into the satellite in Radstock surgery. That's my feeling.
I think they're saying that 20% of their activities relate to midsummer and autumn. Be interesting to know if they mean midsummer and autumn or if they mean midsummer and autumn Westfield, Poulton, Radstock area, and perhaps they could be talking to all of those parish councils as well about funding from each rather than midsummer and autumn. Maybe they are. I don't know if they are. And also, I guess it'd be interesting to know what 20% represents in terms of numbers. 20% of 100 people or 27% of 1,000 people. How many residents will we support with that money?
It's quite difficult with these organisations, I think, putting grants, but they haven't really come to visit us to tell us more about what they do.
And I guess I'd also like to know what sets them apart from other free counselling and mental health support that's offered by mental health services, GP surgeries. What makes them different that we would have to then put a grant into?
I think it's to pick up the heavy demand from GP surgeries and things like that. So
yes, in GP, in physical health, but mental health services have quite a lot of capacity.
They've got no capacity. Sorry, I mean they're maxed out, and it's not that they have no capacity.
They've got quite a lot. So
do you think we could invite them in?
Absolutely.
If they want us to consider the grant, perhaps they could come in and we could understand more about what they're doing, and then figure out a commensurate amount of.
Certainly, the kind of amount of money they're looking at is something we probably have to think about more long term.
Yeah.
And for instance, is it something we would have to start factoring? Is it going to be a regular request?
It's not going to be a one-off, is
No,
it?
that's what you worry. Sometimes, as I say, we're town council, not necessarily a healthcare provider.
Well,
Is it to bring them into the area though? Sorry, I didn't receive this, but you went to my email address.
That's all right. No, I think we've established that we've got enough questions to want to just have a discussion.
Yeah.
Positive discussion, but a discussion all the same to understand it in more detail. And
so do we invite them in to make a presentation, or do we give them? Do we send questions?
I think if they could actually come in and do a presentation, I'd really like to see what they do and how they do it.
It's quite interesting to understand. The 5,000 number, is that a number that they've established because it for a specific reason, or is that the maximum they can apply for? How's that number been? So it'd be interesting for them to come in and just talk it through with us.
Yeah. So we should invite them in to give us more detail about that.
Yeah.
Working
Got
plans.
to remember they're looking for £5,000. So if we ask them to come in, which I'm perfectly happy because I'm always interested in these things, they would then think, oh yeah, well, come on, done our bit, so we're going to get our £5,000.
Well, I think we have to explain it to them that it's a review of a number of applications. There's been one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
That's good.
Well done, everyone.
The next one might be my naivety, because my son's not played football for about 20 years. But when he did, football kits were through local sponsorship of businesses. And the Midland Norton Football Club approached us for £2,000 for new football kits, essentially. But unless things have really changed, but that's how I always thought it worked.
Yeah, that's how I understand it to work as well.
Yeah, and it does say that if they, I think I read that if they didn't get the grant, they would then look to go to local businesses.
To me, it's a bit of a shame really that they came, if they're struggling financially, like a lot of sports organisations are, it seems a shame in the way that they came and said about the sort of kit sponsorship, because I might feel that's harder for the council to do, whereas if they ask for funding for other things, that seems more within our remit. I think that's my issue with it, but yeah, I feel like we should be helping them. But you're right, that normally you'd expect one of the many firms around to maybe try and put a bit of shirt sponsorship in.
I think these would be nice.
So where they're saying that the total cost is 4,664.
Yeah.
And the grant request is 2,000. So looking at their bank balance, their account balance there, they don't have any funds. So are we match funding some sponsors here, or have they not got, do they not have currently a fund for the balance?
I don't think they have, because it says that failing the grant opportunities, they'll have to make available some of their own income to offset any shortfall.
Okay.
I think one of these things is some of these little organisations will survive, but then of course what they're then doing is the parents that pay for it at the moment are already struggling because of the cost of, because they don't have their own pitches, so it's not like the rugby clubs, they're having to hire facilities and then the price goes up and then kids get put off. So reading between the lines, that's kind of, they're saying we want national help.
Okay.
Are we we're not tied into donating to give them that money, are we? Or can we give them a small amount?
We get maybe this one on the crest on the shirt.
Well, yeah, if we're sponsoring, or part sponsoring the shirts, then do we get?
Yeah.
Well, that's the normal do. We get
It is
more.
usually. Is that what it said?
Then we're going to get it in there, can't we?
I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I think once we've got a request on a football kit, we need one a rugby kit and a cricket kit and
This is the worry, isn't it?
endless.
So there's lots of sports clubs.
Yeah.
But then saying that though, I mean, what they're doing is great for football, and personally I'd be minded to give them something like a quarter of what they ask for would be quite
But I think
reasonable.
potentially, do we not have to go back and say, no, we're not gonna give you any sponsorship for your kit, but come back to us with a different application?
Well, whether the money actually ends up going specifically on a t-shirt or ultimately to help them fund the hiring of the facilities needs for the children, not that often. I don't think we would have that much say in it deep down, but I feel that as a town council with the grant budget, giving them a modest amount towards what they're doing is really important. Otherwise, really, what's the point of us and what's the point of our grant budget?
I do really agree with that, and I think they obviously need money, but I think we need to tie it down to a thing
Right.
rather than. Otherwise, I might get TIA, and then that doesn't really benefit
Possibly.
kids.
But then they've
That's
said
fine,
they're able to find other funds, so we're kind of putting £500 or £600 towards this, and they're going to have to go and do some work themselves. And with some other applications, I think that's a really good way for the council to go for it. So that we're encouraging, by doing a bit of match funding, we're encouraging them to do more fundraising themselves, but we've ultimately got, the council's ultimately got money, which we've taken off taxpayers
And what's
to
really
give back to people.
is that they want the money to provide the football kits for the newly formed under 7 age group. I get that, newly formed don't have a kit, but then they want to provide replacement kits for the under 9s, up to under 13s and the under 15s. Well, they do have a kit, it might be great.
They basically, what they're saying, I think, is they've got the boys' kits are now 3 years old and need replacing. The girls' kits look like they were replaced last year, so it's the girls' kits are okay, but it's the boys that are running out of steam.
And haven't they just newly formed again after a couple of years out there?
In my capacity and working with sports clubs locally, it would be good if I could just give some light context. You're right in the respect that they've got a fairly, like a newly refreshed committee, let's say.
Sorry, we need to resolve to stop.
No, it's kind of very one big thing, it's okay.
And there is a finite number of actual organised sports clubs, because I wouldn't like to just say that football's something that should be supported over others. They have had financial difficulties, which they're not in a position to disclose, which has meant their newly formed committee and the growth that they've got plans to do is effectively a survival plan, but at the same time is an encourageable plan for the future. The girls' team has been established as a great offer and should be encouraged in the future, but it means that the stretch of the series of challenges that they've had in terms of securing a permanent base, one of which this season I know was Mr. Northern Cricket Club, which obviously brings that kind of sustainability into like a positive sort of light. They've got a pitch there, and I know White City potentially they might have a more permanent home there, so they're potentially going to have capacity. They've got resources in terms of volunteers, which are quite fresh. They're going through that learning process of kind of ramping up. When it comes to a new team, as Jen said, where you've got a new team, they've got lots of other teams, and the scope they've had previously to go out to sponsors is limited, when there's sort of many other sports clubs and many other youth teams in the area. And subsequently what ends up happening is people move to village clubs, even though they might live in St Norton, which means they go elsewhere to play their sports with their children, and then they still kind of come back to rent the facilities over the winter. And what you kind of ended up happening is their club shrank, went through some difficulties, and then it's starting to grow again. It's starting to get some permanence, but they're going to struggle resource-wise to go out to get those grants, which have increased, or let's not say grants, sponsorship, so to replace or to buy a new kit. Businesses might be willing to give up £200-300, but perhaps not the overall amount.
We've got quite a few grants to get through and other agenda items.
Shall I just carry on unless Gordon would like me to finish?
Yeah, just to
to wind up. Oh, sorry,
yeah,
I thought, sorry, apologies, Gemma. I went here for the chair. So the overall context is they're a club that brings, Dragonfly Leisure gained to the grounds of about £12,000 a year through the rental of the facilities locally, and being based at potentially White City and carrying on as such. The cricket club means that they're very close to, say, the high street, which is bringing up to 150 kids and growing, their parents and associated activities, all to like a really quite local area to St Norton, as opposed to those parents who have, go to the schools and the children go to schools around here who will go to otherwise village, well-supported clubs, which have the sort of around the area facilities and the localised kind of business support, where it's quite a tenacious environment, I believe, around here. And I'd support it, but personally it was like a gesture.
Yeah, you think you could.
I think in principle, I mean, subject to us finding the funding, I think we're pretty much in agreement that we're not funding the entire kit. We're match funding effectively, or partly funding it. Yeah. It is supporting 150 kits, and I think that's a good thing. So I think broadly, provided we can find a way to find the funding for it,
Well,
we're supportive of it.
provide full for
Is that where we turn to a responsible financial officer and say, is it financially prudent for us to make an award of, say, £600 towards the football kits? Do we have enough money for it?
Yeah, you don't need particular because it's benefit two or more people in the parish.
We can afford it.
Well,
Well, you've got some friends.
Yeah.
should we see where we are
At the end of the grants.
I don't know, is that?
Just the mini police, isn't it?
I don't know how we normally do it. I think we normally would just award a grant.
Okay,
So we've done it in
the
the
someone
past.
wants to propose an amount that they think that we should award.
I would propose £600.
I don't think we should do kit, but I think we should give them money.
Okay, so Gordon, do you want to propose?
I'll propose we give them 600.
Anyone second?
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Anyone agree? Would you agree?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good agreement, guys.
I mean,
There'll be one kit with just a really small t-shirt and it's sorry I can't afford it.
We're allowed to do one club and not others.
That
People
depends on
come to
the
us.
site, yeah.
Okay, so we've got the, let's go to the mini police. So Paul Thatcher, PCSO, is requesting £500 for the mini police group that he's been running for Year 5 students for the past year. And it is for the coach hire and for any little extras such as certificate load, and any unused funds will be returned to council at the end of the school year.
I think I've got a lot of time for Paul. I think he does a great job in the town, and I think these are really good. My only concern with this is that it says for the past year we've been running a weekly mini police group for a small group of Year 5 students. I just to understand exactly what the £500 is this a one-off trip, or is this going to provide coach facilities for a number of trips? Or
I think, like you said, is it an intervention of a group of children that's struggling in school, or is it a nice school outing? Why is it in Year 5? I would say the school should fund that.
They won't do it. I mean, I think the point is this is like a small thing we do on top of whatever is provided, and the police went to the Police and Crime Commissioner Forum. One of the things the police believe is by doing little extra things like this, they engage with children at a much earlier age, and then children grow up respecting the police and stuff. So this is like a nice, cute, very kind of cute little sort of thing we do. And then looking through the application, it was very much just for small extra things that wouldn't normally be funded. So of course they could manage without it.
If you look at them on
And
their
the services
Facebook
would
group,
be cut.
they are quite active every week. They do go and do quite a lot of stuff with the children. I think he's right in his small group. It's not particularly large.
is it Peasdown St John's? Could I only apply for?
John's renovation.
Yes.
Well, it says that they're tagging on with Peasdown St John Mini Police, and they're asking for money on behalf of St John Mini Police. So is it our St John Mini Police, or is it Peasdown St John Mini Police?
And I believe it's ours.
Okay.
Yes, St John's School.
Okay.
So what they've done is they've tagged along with a Peasdown St John mini police to a couple of trips. So they kept costs down, but they want the money for St John's School mini police.
Fair enough. I mean, I don't know how many kids are benefiting from it. That's always useful to put in a grant application.
Yeah, I mean, I can only go from what I see on Facebook, kind of 10 to 15 children-ish, I would say, on most weeks.
I think it's funny. I think what can be good about these things is children speak, don't they? So, and obviously, every little outing they'll do, sort of different children will be involved and stuff. But the children, it's great. Children come back from a little field trip where they go, "This is great. I want to be a policeman." I just met a police dog, and it kind of, I do understand that sometimes when the police have got various priorities which we could discuss at great length. But I think little things like this are actually really good to get the children quite involved.
Yeah.